people just like me who had known him on some level for decades. My story about Olu that I love is when he and I sat down to talk about his portrait. We were at the Pettit Center in the lobby and we were chatting, and a guy came over to tell Olu he was leaving. It was Shawnee Davis, who is a speed skater with a drawer full of Olympic and world gold medals. And Olu introduced us. I had not met him before. And I kind of went, "Hi, nice to meet you." And I turned back to Olu to talk to him some more. And I only realized on my drive home that I'd kind of been rude and I had blown off the real famous person to talk to my famous person. So Olu, besides being a speed skater and musician, is a former police officer. And he's not anymore. And when I asked him why, he said, "I was putting so many young people in jail. And I wanted to get on the other side of that equation." So now Olu works teaching peace and nonviolent confrontation skills to kids and people who are in domestic violence situations to help them break out of that cycle. And I'm really excited to hear what he's going to talk to us about tonight to help us bring some of that into our own communities. So please welcome Olu Sijuwade.
So when I was little, I didn't know this. I just knew that every weekend they were gone playing somewhere, and they were learning all these songs. And then the Cool and the Gang album basement in one of Milwaukee's floods that we had a few years ago. She said, "Oh, I'll never forget the time you cooled the gang called us up on stage to jam with us." I said, "You jam with cooling the gang?" You know, I didn't know this stuff until I'm in my 40s or 50s. So I always felt like my parents were, well, I guess they were famous to other people. They were famous to people that, you know, the Motown didn't do that. This was a band you could count on. But to them, it was important that they did other things. And like my father was really into, well, he worked at PATH when PATH was still open, but he was really into self-improvement. He got into real estate, and my mother was really into doing social work. Although she worked as a nursing assistant, she told me that she really was there because a lot of times they had difficult patients, and she would work with the difficult patients. And they were calling her because she seemed to be good at that. But music was just something that they did really well, and it was part of their life. So I always feel like every time I do something, I try to figure out a way to sing music in. And then when Deb asked me about this, I was thinking about, well, she was talking to Shani, you know, she could hit a picture in there. And it is kind of weird because Shani is a famous person, but, you know, he would, you know him, he's humble. Like, he wouldn't think that he wouldn't brag about, you know, when he just flipped off or anything like that. I've known him since he was 8, and he stays with me when he's trained in Milwaukee. And I just know him as this young guy that was 8 years old that said, "One day I'm going to skate in the Olympics, I'm going to win a medal." And it's like, yeah, we all want to do that. He did it twice. And he's still going for another one next year in Korea. So I always think about people like that. I think about the things I'm going to talk about tonight. There are a few people, one of them is here, that do things that I want to be part of, and I think these are the people that should be famous. But if I could just be one, like Thelonious Monk said that he didn't have to be famous, he just wanted to be one of the people that could play. That's all he wanted to be known as. Anybody know who Thelonious Monk is? All right. So he did get famous after all. But I grew up in Milwaukee. I grew up on 16th Street, and I was born on 12th and Brown. And I didn't realize the significance of where I was born until several years ago. And the fact that all my aunts and uncles and my parents, they all worked within, and lived within like about 10 blocks of each other. So as I got older, they talked about Bronzeville in Milwaukee. And so I said, "Oh, we lived in Bronzeville." And I thought that was cool. We all migrated up to Milwaukee in the 1950s and 40s and found like a neighborhood where we could fit in. And then as it turns out, well, we didn't really have a choice. Milwaukee still had legal segregation. But I thought that was just like, that's just how we settled, you know. And I didn't know that my mother, she worked at St. Anthony's as a nursing assistant. I didn't know until years later that was because that was the only hospital that would allow black people to work there. And that hospital was created so that they could do that. And so I found out all these things later on. It's like, wow, they went through a lot of stuff. And I can see why they hung on to their music in addition to everything else that they did. And I can see how I stand on the shoulders of my parents and my uncles and aunts who had to go through all this stuff so that we would have it easier. And so one of the things is that I grew up in the neighborhood where I grew up. I don't think it was rough, but I used to get jumped a lot for like lunch money or because I was carrying books home. They said I was a nerd, and they didn't like nerds. Or I was carrying. It was funny because I was carrying not this saxophone, but another saxophone. I always thought that they would take my back then lunch. This is called Oland. Back then lunch was a quarter, and so they would take my quarter for lunch. But they would leave the $600 saxophone. they would just leave that with me. And so when I was little, I thought, you know, when I grow up, I want to be maybe not a superhero, but if I could, I'd want to be somebody that would make it so that people wouldn't have to get bullied or worry about being bullied to make them never walk through the neighborhood just for being who they want to be, just for being themselves. And so I went away to college at Indiana University. I thought I was going to physical education. I ended up going into physical education 35 years later. I'm a grad student now in exercise physiology. But I took a detour. I started getting into police work, or criminal justice, and I started looking at that as a viable way to do something in the community. And so I was on Milwaukee Police Department. Before that, I worked at a school called St. Charles, and I worked there with young men that had been in trouble with the law, and they were either trying to get straight so they wouldn't have to go to Wells or something like Lincoln Hills, which is we heard about, which is gone now, and or they were on their way out. They were trying to get back to live with their families, and so I worked with them, and that was the first job that I had coming out of college in Milwaukee. And I was glad to have that as the first job because it got me into working with people that a lot of people are afraid of, young black men. And then after that, I became a police officer. I thought, they have so many interactions with police that when I became a police officer, I could do something different, and they would have more positive interactions. And there were a lot of positive interactions, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get on the other side of it. But there was one night that it was hard for me to forget, because there was a lot of nights that's hard to forget that police force that I saw some stuff that shook me. And it kind of got to me too that, a lot of times they say police officers get jaded. It's like, it's not working. I'm not getting jaded. I'm getting more sensitive. Every time I hear a shot, I was like, I know somebody. Yeah. But one night, there was an Marquette student, this was by 15th and 16th in Wisconsin, and I was driving a car by myself, a squad car by myself, and he waved me down, so I just got robbed by these guys, and he described the car, and I found the car on the license plate, asked kind of the numbers he had, and it was like 5 or 6 guys in the car, and I actually caught the car, and 5 of the guys ran up, but I gave directions, and then the other squads circled in on them and caught them, and then the driver never left, and so, I gave him like, okay, you gotta get out, you have any weapons? Supposedly he had a weapon, he pointed a gun, and he did, yeah. And so he had this sheepish smile on his face, like he's up to something, he's gonna try something. And so he handed me the gun, and I was like, he's handing me the gun, that's okay, but he's calm, and I can see it. And I look, and right away I can tell it's not a real gun, it's a plastic starter gun. And I can tell that's why he had this sheepish look on his face, and it's like, what's wrong with you? Because it's gonna be treated like it's a real gun. And so I think a couple of weeks later I got a citation, which means I did really well. And then I thought about like all these young men between 15 and 16 years old, and they're going to be doing 10 to 15 years for armed robbery. And the idea that I got the citation just didn't sit well with me. Like, man, I could have done something else with them besides arrest them. And so that stuck with me. And it wasn't long after that I left the police department. Not just because I wanted to stop doing that, but because the health department wanted to do what they call violence prevention. And I thought that was forward thinking. And actually, back in 1992, they were the first health department to actually full-time have somebody do violence prevention. Was the idea that public health should be considered a health issue and not just a criminal justice issue. And a way of thinking. And thank you. So we try to change the way that people think. And my job is to help support communities. I have a friend now with the city that the mayor recruited named Reggie Moore, and he runs the cities. Now they have their own violence prevention department. I was just like an office in there, and I worked with a woman that started the domestic violence agency, and I'm talking about another woman here named Jerry Stroh that also started the domestic violence agency. But a way of helping communities to organize around the risk factors, like if you have heart disease, I'm an exercise physiologist. If you have heart disease, there are certain risk factors, things that if they exist, they increase the chance that you could have a heart attack. You know what any of them are? What if you're a certain what? A certain weight? What if you're a certain gender? What if you're a certain color? Hold on. Certain age. It wasn't just the bald spot, it was the age. Okay, those are risk factors. So what are risk factors for violence? How can you tell when it's going to be violence? Poverty, okay. What's another one? Absent father, okay. One of the poorest countries in the world has one of the lowest violence rates? India. So why do we have so much? We're supposed to be the richest country, right? What's our other risk factors for violence? The media, okay. And I think about that too, and I'm thinking, but don't they in Japan, they have all kinds of, they make the violent media that we watch, the video games, and anime, and so I think about that too, because they say that the amount of violence they have in their entertainment is way higher than we have So that's, I'm not saying that's not true. For some people that's a big impact. Education, okay. Mass incarceration, okay. I mean, those are all risk factors. And you can look at them both ways too, because you're thinking, so you're saying that people that aren't smart are more violent than people that are smart. And I have a professor in my pathophysiology who worked in criminal, he was really into forensics, so he worked at the time when they were interviewing Dahmer. And I remember actually meeting Dahmer when I was a police officer the night he was arrested. And I just remember, he hadn't been booked yet, he was sitting on the floor, and he was just like, he didn't look calm, he looked like he got caught stealing somebody's $5 bill off the table, and then it's like, oh, stuff you're talking, you know. And then he looked at me like, he don't realize what I did, and I got like the station, they told me, it's like, but you know, when you see him, it's like, oh, this guy's pretty intelligent, you know. But, you know, he ate 14 people for a long time, for many years. I mean, those are all risk factors for violence. But the most common risk factors are the ones that every human being does pretty much all the time. The big three, first one is, there you go, it's legal, alcohol. And that's why it's the biggest one, because it's legal. People have beer all the time. I mean, there might be beer after we get done here. I'm not saying it's going to cost money. It's a combination. The second one, I used to call it the 3 A's, arguments. Has anybody had an argument, anybody in the world in the last week? Disappointment, disagreement, yeah. And it's a problem when people feel like they have to prove their point, and they have to be taken, it has to be their way or else. And they have to use force. And then the third one is, it's an A. Somebody alluded to it when they said, it's finished when they take it from my cold dead arms. I mean, I said it already. Arm, yeah. What's the guy's name? Charles Heston? Yeah. So anyway, arguments, alcohol, and being armed, having a weapon. And homicides for young people, especially males, it tends to be guns that are most used. But homicide is one form of violence. The most common form of gun violence in the United States, you know what the actually is? Actually, in the state of Wisconsin, you know what the most common form of gun violence actually is? Suicide. The most common form of gun violence is suicide. But we focus, the media focus a lot of times on homicide. So the health department is like getting people to actually look at what are the anti-risk factors. Like if you're going to spend time with somebody, you can spend a lot of time and resources on poverty, a lot of time and resources on mental health, and all that is helpful. But of the big three, we don't address, like how is alcohol part of the equation? And for a lot of people, is they combine alcohol with the arguing, and then they find a weapon. Matter of fact, the Homicide Review Commission, the coroner, not the coroner, the detective, you know, they go to a crime scene, they see like, you always expect you're going to see an empty beer can, you're going to see a weapon or a gun, and then you're going to find out they were arguing about something. Like, that's part of every crime scene. Like, that should be something obvious that we deal with. So, one way that it's just to get people to look at things differently is to actually get people to do things differently. So, I'm going to ask you to participate in physical activity. Yes, I am. That's why I'm getting my master's in exercise physiology. My professor said that the less sedentary you are, the better your heart health is. So, are you ready?
Yes.
It's your activity. You're going to take either your left hand or your right hand, and you're going to pick your index finger and point it straight up. All right, good. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to look up at it, and while you're looking up at it, you're going to turn your hand clockwise, like the old-fashioned analog clock that has hands. Okay, you're going to turn it clockwise, and you're looking at it. All right, has everybody got their hand going the same direction clockwise? Look at the neighbor next to you, make sure. Okay. All right, so what you're going to do with your hand is slowly bring it down, and keep turning it, and keep looking at your finger, and keep looking until it's under your chin, and keep looking. And it should be, when it's under your chin and you're looking down, do you see the direction it's going? It's, what? It changed directions. Okay, did you follow my directions? You're supposed to keep it going this way.